All right, so we go with our second presentation of this afternoon. We have with us Carolina Pinart, Global Product Manager at Nestlé. So Carolina, the stage is all yours, and let's go.
Okay, so I'd like to share my screen. Is it like the computer thing?
Yes.
Okay, let me see. 1 second.
Of course.
But for some reason, it's not working.
All right. What is the?
Let's see. Are
Yeah.
you seeing it now?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, perfect.
Cool.
Okay,
You
so
go.
hi everyone, and thank you for inviting me to an event that starts with the word "she," which is always, a plus for me. And I want to talk to you this afternoon about how we're trying to become a cognitive company at Nestle, and what that means, right? In terms of challenges, in terms of how we're, going to get to AI at scale. Clara was saying I'm the product director for new generation technologies at Nestle. I've been with the company for the last 3.5 years. I've spent though the last 22 in technology, where I've done virtually anything you can do. I think from research to innovation, product development, business development, to all the way to operations in corporates and also in startups. And I also teach at the university, advise startups. So I'm a kind of a hustler in technology. I understand that the audience is a bit like that. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. And I want to start with the word scale and what that means for us. So we are the biggest fast-moving consumer goods company in the world. We sell 1.3 billion products every single day of the year. Actually, a little bit more these days with COVID. We have 300,000 employees, and we sell our products in 197 countries, which is almost, all the countries that exist on Earth. So it is a huge operation. Besides that, we have over 400 factories with over 5,000 production lines. So I guess you get an idea of the scale of Nestle. And then when you start thinking about automating and adding machine learning to such a scale, you probably start seeing like, wow, we're going to have issues in putting stuff in production, in ethics, in change management, in upskilling and reskilling. And yes, we have all of that, and we're going to cover a few of this. Now, let's start with the end, right? With our vision. This is the statement that our CIO made last year. We kind of kick up officially the AI program, although as a company we've been incorporating pockets of machine learning for the last years, especially in our operations. And the vision is that we want to become a cognitive enterprise, and by that we mean that we used unbiased machine intelligence capabilities to basically operate, to automate, to respond, to react, to decide, and deliver value to our employees, consumers, customers, and society at large, right? A society piece is very important. We recently launched, for example, a net zero challenge, and that's going to require, amongst a lot of other things, a lot of AI, right? So this is our vision. It's very ambitious, and we want to become such a cognitive enterprise by the end of 2025. So there's not a lot of time. Now, how do you do that in a large company? You start with a strategic program, right? If you need to go somewhere, you need a compass to get there. So last year, when we launched the challenge and the vision, we launched a strategic program, and I'm one of the leads. That it's divided in different pillars that we're going to see in a minute, and I lead one of them. So the program, what it does, it provides directions to become a cognitive company, and we focus on like the different building blocks and also the different challenges that the company is going to address while it's automating. And those are kind of grouped into 5 pillars or 5 building blocks. The first one is the strategy itself, what is the road that we're going to follow, and ethics. I've been talking about ethics because this is a big thing. The second one is use cases and roadmap. What are we going to do first? What are we going to do next? What are the low-hanging fruits? What are the things that we need to invest because they're going to move the needle but we need to first, fix, for example, data issues, right? I lead this piece, the use cases and roadmap, in the middle of the screen. And then there's also technology, which provide guidelines and build a landscape. And there's also, there's always a trade-off, like, do you go with, a smaller landscape? To what extent do we get like niche vendors for some specific use cases? So that's just a big piece as well. And then we give guidance to the different functions and businesses at Nestle so they can accelerate on the path towards becoming a cognitive company. To them, methodology and compliance. As you can imagine, our industry is super regulated. We have to move fast, but we cannot break things. So we need to be compliant like all the time. And that requires having a lot of methodologies to be able to actually standardize and accelerate. And finally, the education and communication piece. Like, imagine we have 300,000 employees. Only a fraction of them have like a data background. In terms of data engineers, they are data scientists. Probably around 1,000, 1,500 people, give or take, out of the 300,000. So we have a long way to go. I'm not saying that everybody needs to be upskilled to AI, but at least there's the level of awareness that everybody should have. And then also, some of the tasks are going to be fully automating moving forward. So we're going to reskill the people so they can do other jobs. I'll give you an example of this one, which is we accelerated launching chatbots, for example, during COVID. Because because of lockdown primarily. For example, we had to close our Nespresso boutiques in a lot of markets. Now, chatbots help provide asynchronous communications for help desk and help automate. So we are able to automate around 70% of first line support. What we're doing with our agents is they take the most complex cases, and they're also doing other tasks that they were not able to do before because they were taking calls, right? So education and communication, really, really important piece to raise awareness and also to reskill our workforce so they can actually work with AI and thrive in AI. So I want to start talking about, some of the challenges, especially on the ethics piece. And then also I'm going to touch a little bit more on the use cases and on the technology. Now, we have launched our ethics code. What we did is we just went around with the different initiatives governance and major companies are doing. We operate around the sun. So we look at Europe and the US, we look at Asia. And we decided that we would go with a standard of ethics that would be at least as high as the highest one that we saw. And the second thing that we decided is that we're going to do an ethics code of conduct based on values. It's called a value-based ethics code. And those are rooted on our values. So as a company, our main value is respect, which we break down in 4. Respect for ourselves, respect for others, for diversity, and for the future, right? And those are the values that guide everything we do, from the initiatives that we do in sustainability to the products we developed, and of course, the AI that we're going to put in production, right? So that was, there was a lot of discussion on how we had to go about ethics, and we rooted them in values, right? So our foundations for ethics are 6 of them. I'm just going to talk about really one of them because the others would actually apply to any software you put out there. So transparency and explainability, diversity and non-discrimination and fairness, privacy and security, environmental and social well-being, accountability, and technical robustness. So the last 4 was basically what we're already doing in Nestlé IT for software that we put in production. Now, what changes or is augmented with AI is the piece of transparency and explainability. So transparency, being able to actually be very clear on the data and processes and how we do things, and explainability is being able to explain why some decisions were made. Right? This is really magnified with AI, and explainability much more complex because, with deterministic software, it's based on rules, and so you can go, trace back to the rule or to the decision tree to explain why a decision was made. With AI, and especially if you use like deep learning, that becomes much more complex. So this is a field with which we're working. on exploring, for example, explaining about AI principles, and also with our legal team as well. Diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness. I think this one is self-explanatory. We, at the end of the day, what AI does, it magnifies some patterns that it learns, right? And we need to be extremely careful on, what are the patterns that we're going to have our machine learning models learn, right? And think that we are really operating around the world. So we have to be very mindful, and we are on all aspects of the company. So AI is not going to be different. When we think about the use cases and the roadmap, what we're trying to do is prioritize the things, and it's a fine balance, by the way, between what you do first, so you get some quick wins, so you get business buy-in, and also like the tough things that we need to do. Obviously, if you think that of becoming a fully data-driven company, that means re-engineering processes, that means eliminating silos, and there are a lot of them. You can imagine it's a huge company. That means also, getting people. It's not about technology only, it's also a lot about people. So there's massive transformation and change management to do. So what we're doing is creating this list, like, for example, for 2021, what are the top 10 like best bets that we can do, and focus on those and start scaling those. And maybe they're focused on operations, and they're going to be focusing on marketing and sales, and we're not going to do anything in finance maybe in 2021, and really do them well, create that sort of center of scale to be able to scale those apps so that we can then lift and shift to other businesses and functions. Now, we do have a lot of use cases, right? So I'm just listing here like the top ones. And we looked at use cases as to what is the business driver, right? So usually, why would you do AI, right? So you would do AI because you want to increase revenue, you want to lower cost, you want to lower risks, right? In COVID times, lowering risk is a big deal, right? So here is just an example. It's actually taken from a Boston Consulting Group report for the fast-moving consumer goods industry. And if you think of the operations, there are top 4 use cases that should drive an increase in sales between 7 and 9%, right? So which are, the no surprises here. Demand forecasting, so we can, forecast for in terms of what products will people want to buy, and what are the supply levels that we need to have, because the biggest fear of our industry is out of stock. And at the beginning of the lockdown, you would see that with toilet paper, for example. So it's always a game of anticipating what would be in demand to make sure the supply levels are correct, and also what products will sell better, right? And what are the trends? So demand forecasting is one. Return on investment measurement for advertising and promotions. This is a big one, because even a 0.5% improvement is a lot of money. So we do a lot of machine learning models for pricing and marketing modeling. And this is, by the way, one of the first pieces of machine learning that we studied 4 or 5 years ago, and one of the most mature use cases. Then predicting out of stock, on shelf availability, more on the retail side, and in partnership with our retailers, we get a lot of data from the grocery stores, so we can work together with them. And finally, individualized store assortment. I can imagine we have, we assort stores of all shapes and forms and sizes, and the 24/7s, the supermarkets in a lot of countries. So this is a very complex thing to do. So that's for the operations. There's also top use cases, a little bit less in sales increase according to projections from Boston Consulting Group, between 3 and 5 for consumers, right? So we are going towards, and we're started already on really personalization, right? So promotions that are kind of dynamic, localized, and personalized. That's the holy grail, where we started to apply AI. Also on engagement, that's personalized. And the example that I gave you at the beginning around chatbots also has this component of personalized in a lot of ways. On you choose when you talk to the chatbot. If you already have an account with Nestlé because you're a customer, you bought an espresso machine, for example, it really is personalized to your profile. Also, diagnostic and recommendation services. It's an important one. And continuing with an espresso example, the people buy the the machines and they eventually, have issues at some point, or they have a lot of questions depending on the demographics and how to get them set up. And finally, trend predictions for product development. We have over 5,000 researchers in our R&D unit. It's the biggest in the industry, to come up with new products, what we call innovation and renovation. What are the different spins on next flavor of Kit Kat, for example? That will be renovation. But what are the innovations like plant-based proteins? So we are putting a lot of machine learning in identifying trends from a lot of data sources. And maybe another day you invite me and I'll tell you about this project, because it's one of the most amazing ones that we have, to really understand, even at a molecular level, at a flavor level, what's gonna sell really well, right? That it's nutritious, that it's yummy, that it's gonna be attractive for our consumers. So just to give you a feel for that, this is just the top use cases, by the way. I've onboarded so far as part of the program over 500 projects of 56 different use cases, right? So, and this is the things that we are doing right now. My projection is that next year we're probably going to be working on around 2,000 projects of different sizes around AI. And finally, this is the biggest one in factories. I save it for last, but actually is the biggest one in factories. That's if I said that pricing modeling and dynamic forecasting is one of the biggest that we're working on the operations side, and factories is predictive maintenance, right? So actually 29% of all AI implementation across manufacturing in all industries, I mean ours, but also car makers and any kind of industry that produces something in a factory, 29% of AI is machinery maintenance and quality. Huge, huge savings in cost and also in lowering risks. And we have a lot of that. And that's proven really, really useful in COVID times, where actually our engineers were not allowed to fly. And we combine this predictive maintenance with also remote assistance, which is based on computer vision, to have our factory floor workers, do the job that a specialized engineer would do, and augmented by predictive maintenance. So that's been instrumental over the last of course 9 months of COVID outbreak. So technology selection. We could spend the whole afternoon talking about this. So I just, this is the last thing that I'm going to mention. Some key technologies, and just to also get you interested, because we are hiring, key technologies that we have around AI. Smart sensors, obviously, how do you do predictive maintenance in factories? How do you connect coffee machines? So it's vending machines. We have a huge also out-of-home business, smart sensors, virtual agents, and those combine also with natural language processing. This is huge, not only for chatbots, but also for contract management, for semantic search. We have a ton of things around natural language processing. Augmented reality, and the example that I gave you in factories of, helping factory floor workers through remote assistance, that was augmented reality, actually. A lot of image recognition for, instead of having to manually inspect products in the production lines. So we have image recognition. And finally, robotic process automation, which we are also enhancing with AI. That's a huge, huge also factor to cost savings and risk reduction, right? In a longer supply chain, for example, our transactions, we have billions in contracts. Imagine, the number of transactions, number of invoices, and the number of different systems that we have to connect for procurement and supply chain. So hopefully I gave you a good overview, but a little bit fast maybe, of what it means to run AI at a planetary scale, and it got you also excited to know a little bit more about Nestlé in sort of the sessions that are going to take place this afternoon.
Thank you, Carolina, very much for that super interesting presentation. You say it, and I had the feeling that you could be talking for ages, about this topic.
I know. Very passionate about this, but I was told 20 minutes, and I actually did 19.
Yeah, very sharp, but we could feel the motivation. So thanks for that. If there are questions, we have time for a couple of questions. You can write them on the chat of the stage, and then I can read them to Carolina. Don't be shy. That then I see that then you have questions and you want to say.
And by the way, can I say hi? Say
hi. Yes, sure.
Justina, hola.
Okay, you see the question? Do you want me to read it for you?
I see one. Is sales increase mentioned in slides due to AI? Yes. Those are, how do we measure that? Well, those are projections by the Boston Consulting Group. We measure them up against the baseline. So it's basically measured against past sales. We do projections. So what we do is, what is the projection? Every year we do projection, right? And then we have like a sort of a control group, because we don't have AI everywhere, right? So we can compare in terms of similar markets, similar product categories. So obviously it's not a like for like, because once you put AI, you have it. But we do like kind of close sort of when you do a clinical trial, you know, the control group and the group that's taking the new drug. It's kind of how we do that.
You have another question here. What are your views with vertical farming for big companies?
That's not related to AI, really. But I'm not an expert in this, so we are exploring all sorts of farming and in our quest and challenge to net zero. So that is one of the things that we are exploring, and we have an approach of kind of a test and learn for everything we do. So I know that one of the pillars for net zero, which has been basically carbon neutral by 2050, is around farming and the impact it has. So.
You have another question there. Nestlé looking at 3D food printing.
Yes, and we're actually investing in companies that do that as well. Both sort of as a complement to kind of products that you would buy in store or online, but also think in our sort of our R&D unit that I mentioned is looking into a scenario. So we also project, you know, future scenarios. That's another cool presentation. And one of them is the day that we're all going to have a 3D printer at home. And therefore, instead of going to the grocery store and buying your Maggi noodles, we would, you know, actually sell the instructions to print them out, right? So, and how would that scenario look like? So yes, looking on, and there's a cool one. If any of you want to visit the hub in Barcelona that we have, where we're exploring 3D food printing for pet food. That's one of the simplest foods, especially the dry one that you can print at home. And you know, we're doing demos, not eating them. We do have dogs at the office that eat the tests.
You have 2 more questions.
Okay. So for someone starting in AI data science, do you have any recommendations? Yes, because I had no idea about this 2 years ago. So my recommendation is read a lot and talk a lot to people that know about this, that can kind of guide you through kind of leapfrogging your know-how, and get hands-on. This, especially for adults, and this is science, not me talking, we learn by doing things. So decide what you want to do. In my case, I decided I wanted more on the sort of on the communication and strategic piece of AI, rather than actually building the models. I actually hired people that do that in my team. But either way, I also have people in my team. I have actually a journalist that started doing chatbots more on the conversation flow, and now she's doing the machine learning training. And she's really great at that. And she combines that, you know, acumen of understanding what a conversation is, and then understanding also kind of natural language processing. So if you think that a journalist can become a machine learner, and, you know, everything is possible. But yeah, you have to put the 10,000 hours. It really takes time. So, but if you like it, you know. And do you think deep learning will leverage healthcare Nestlé products? It will leverage everything. Yes. Yes. Although, you know, going back to the ethics, our wellness business, along with infant nutrition, are the ones that we really need to look with a lot of care on, you know, what is the fine line between, you know, for example, recommending and influencing, right? So in there, we take, you know, very careful steps. But our aim is that AI will power Nestlé 5 years from now, everything.
Okay, so thank you very much.
If Justina wants to chat with me sometime, contact me.
On LinkedIn.
Exactly, on LinkedIn.
She will.
Actually, that applies to anyone who wants to contact me. My LinkedIn's out there. I have a very unusual name. I'm the only one on LinkedIn, so it's very easy to find me.
Like you, not like me, Laura Fernandez. Imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get any credit. That's actually my parents.
All right, that was amazing, Carolina. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Sorry for the
Okay.
other questions. We need to time on our next talk, but yeah, Carolina will be there open for you. So thank
Okay.
you again.
Pleasure.
Have a great afternoon, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Keep rocking.
Thank you.